You see the red button?
Yep.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Birth Moms Real Talk Saturday live chat. We're here for a hot topic today for real. Birth Moms Real Talk has the how can I say the experience, or we just go out there and we talk about stuff that other people are not talking about. So our topic today is, why do birth mothers and or adoptees do not want a reunion? So we've got a triad here. We've got parts of a triad. We've got two adoptees on, and we've got a birth mom. Let me see if I can bring Lori in, because I see her again. Can you hear us now, Lori?
I can. Can you hear me?
Very good.
All
Very
right.
good. We are
Yes.
live. We are live. Okay. So we have adoptees on today, and we have birth moms on today, myself and Lori. We may be joined by others. But as I said, the topic is, why are there circumstances of why birth moms or adoptees do not want a reunion? Just to give some background, I've been away from you for a while. I missed all of you, these Saturday chats. A lot of things been happening in life. And that's why I say life. I had surgery. I lost an older brother. I moved, planning for global travel. So my head has been switching it around, and I could whip my hair around. But I'm so glad to be back with all of you today. And one particular reason, let me just say why this particular topic. In the last 30 days, I know I have gotten at least 4 emails, some from birth moms, some from adoptees, asking this question: why doesn't my mother want to meet me? Why doesn't my child want to meet me? So I said, let's just talk about it. Let's just talk about it. Just to give some disclaimers, my name is D. Yvonne Rivers. I'm your host of Birth Moms Real Talk. I am not the psychologist. I am not the therapist. So you get your therapy. Don't come to me with that, okay? But these support groups, this conversation, that's healing. I like to call Birth Moms Real Talk a place for grace and healing. We started the podcast last June, June 26th of last year. We now have 22 episodes, and we are really, I get so many comments each particular week. Lori is popping in and out, but hey, technology, we're trying to get her back in here. Let's see. You see me peering and say, I've got a glare. Okay. Let's see. All right, Lori, we got you back. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great, great, great. So I'm going to just go get started. I want to have each one of them give a short, maybe 1 minute presentation. Should say presentation. I'm always used to doing presentations about you, yourself, your bio. So I'm going to start with you, Lori. Just give me a snippet. Identify yourself, birth mom, where you grew up, and just your circumstance with your child. Same thing when I go to Darren and when I go to Michael. I want them to tell a little bit about their adoptee experience. So, Lori, why don't you get us started?
Okay. I'm Lori Scobie. I am a birth mom of 33 years. I was raised in near Fort Knox, Kentucky. My daughter was born in Lexington, Kentucky in 1989. I am not in reunion with her. I found her a couple of years ago with the help of a search angel, and I've had 1 5-minute conversation with her. And she's not ready for contact with me.
Right.
So I just wait patiently and try to respect the boundary that she set there.
So you understand that. That's one particular reason I asked you to come on. A couple of other moms, one has had a reunion, another one has not had a reunion, because we want to dispel, I say myth too, that people think it's automatic. You find and then it's going to be. Not necessarily so. So you really have
Right.
got some valid things to really comment about. So Darren, I'm going to come to you for you to identify yourself.
Okay. Darren Watson. I was born in 1970 in Alberta, Canada, and I was adopted at 7 months old. And I moved to Texas in 1991. And in 1995, I searched and found my birth mother in Canada. And we initially had a very strong emotional connection and reunion. And over 20 years, the relationship kind of deteriorated. I was rejected about half a dozen times during that period, and I tried to fix things between us. And finally, after 20 years of reunion, I chose to cut ties with her because I didn't feel it was helpful or enhancing my life in any way. And it just, when there would be a conflict between us, I just felt there was, I would lose my peace and serenity, and it would throw me off for 2 or 3 days. And I just decided it wasn't worth continuing having relationship with her.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you for that, Darren. Michael, let's hear about you.
Let me see. I'm a domestic adoptee from Chicago. I was adopted at 2 months and basically just lived there for four or 5 years, and then moved to Southern California, got married and had my kids there, and moved to Atlanta 25 years ago. So yeah, we're settled in here in a big way.
Okay.
I found my birth mother, whole family, kind of by accident. I never searched, never cared about adoption. And then when it happened, it was such a shock. And I see that Darren's a reunion coach, and I did everything the wrong way, but it actually ended up working out. And I am in reunion with the whole family, both dad and mom's side.
Okay.
And it's been really good.
Okay.
But now I went down the adoption rabbit hole. I've listened to every podcast there is, and including all of yours, Devon. And they're helpful. They help you understand everything. And I'm also part of Adoptees That Connect here in Georgia now, and I'm sitting on a committee we're trying to pass the law in Georgia where adoptees can have their original birth certificate at 18. So
Wonderful.
We're going to try to lobby that through next year.
Good. And that's one particular reason I wanted at least two perspectives from the triad, because you know what you've been through, whatever way it's ended up. So this is a question for all of you. Now, I think some of you have answered the question. I heard you say, Michael, you really hadn't thought about it, so you really weren't searching. You found by accident or whatever. With you, Lori, and with you, Darren, and you maybe reflected to it, that at what point you knew you were adopted. And with Lori, was this a search all your life? You always knew you wanted to reconnect with your daughter? Lori, why don't you go first?
Absolutely. I waited 18 years thinking that as soon as she turned 18, she would want to find me. Mm-hmm. And that kind of got me through that time, was the belief that after I waited 18 years, I would be able to reconnect with her, and that piece of my heart would be back and everything would be okay and we could go forward. And then when that didn't happen, I thought, well, maybe she's just too young, and maybe she needs to be 21 and then 25 and then 30. And now we're at 33. And I would drop everything right this moment to answer a text message from her, take a phone call from her. I would drive to Knoxville to meet her today if that's what she wanted me to do. I would do anything.
Right.
To have any connection with her.
Right. Now, Jess, would
that's
you just
my daughters?
Go ahead.
As with my
Lori.
daughters. My daughters would love to have a connection with her too.
So you have younger daughters. So talk about that. Talk about your other daughters who they still want that relationship too.
Yeah, I have a 25-year-old and a 19-year-old that I parented, and both of them would love to know her. I didn't tell them until they were 16 and 10, mostly because of my own shame and my worry about how they would receive me if they knew this about me. And both of them have been amazing with my story, particularly my younger one, because her personality is very similar to mine. And so she's an empath. And as soon as she knew, she wanted to know her sister, and she was excited to know that she has another big sister, and it was hard for her, and it's still hard for her, really, I think, to accept the fact that she's not ready to connect with us.
Right, right. So let's take what Lori just said, that at any time, any moment, or whatever, she'll do anything, drive here, there, whatever. Likewise, to both you and Darren, Michael, as adoptees, is that, did you see that perspective of your birth mom or birth parents or birth family before you met? Was that even in your mind that my birth parents, wherever they are, really will do anything to meet me? Tell me what you were thinking. Maybe, well, Michael, you said, you sort of fell into it or whatever, or reluctant to it. But I want the adoptees to talk about how it was with you and maybe your expectation. Just like Lori said, she was waiting at age 18. She was expecting a call. My daughter's going to reach out. So share, if the two guys would just share about as adoptees.
We go first.
Okay. I knew early on I was adopted. And when I was 6, my parents took me to the town I was born in Alberta. We drove by the hospital, and I had some questions. And after that visit, my questions were answered. When I would see adoption reunions on talk shows, I would get very emotional, like on Donahue or Oprah or other shows. And I thought, I want that experience. And so after I turned 25, my mom gave me a copy of Journey of the Adopted Self by Betty Jean Lifton. And I got it when I was 24. It took me a year to start reading it because I was too scared to read. I even with my parents' support, I was still felt loyalty. But once I started reading the book, I thought, okay, I relate to so much in this book. I need to search. And
what was, if I can interrupt you, Darren, what was that fear? You said you were too afraid. What was the fear?
I was afraid of upsetting my parents, even though, my mom gifting me that book and writing in the book, saying it would help me on my journey. I'm like, okay, she wrote on the inside cover, and I didn't even open the rest of the book. I just put it aside for a year. So after, thanks to Open Records, my search took only 8 weeks. I spoke to my birth mother on October 9th, 1995. That was Canadian Thanksgiving weekend. And we talked for an hour and a half. And near the end of the call, she said, well, I really want to see you, but I don't have money for it right now. And that was kind of a bubble burst to my expectation.
Yeah.
I thought, and she told me, this is, the most painful thing I've ever been through in my life. And I've always wanted to meet you for 25 years, but you're using money as an excuse.
Yeah. Okay. And put a pin in that for now, Darren, because I'm relate back to what, again, with Lori's work, she'll do anything. Let's hear from you, Michael.
Yeah, like I said, I fell into it. I did 23andMe for a health thing. It wasn't even, it was for fun. It was, a podcast that said, and so, and I had done Ancestry 10, 15 years, right when it came out. So I was, and I never really looked at them or anything, and I never was searching. And then lo and behold, about a year and a half later, I log in because they got a new DNA report, not my relatives. And I look in there and it said my first cousin's here. And I sent him a note, and I get my first phone call from him was my brother. He calls me up. And he goes, I guess we're related. He goes, yeah, you're sitting down. I'm your brother. Wow. And in my entire life, I thought about I would think about my birth father and birth mother, but never once did it enter my mind that I would have brothers and sisters. That just wasn't there. And so the next day I talked to my half sister, and then lo and behold, I talked to my birth mother. And that was, typical, 2-hour conversation to, just, 58 years of catching up.
Right. So she was receptive.
Yes, we're still. I mean, I talked to her this morning before
Okay.
before this.
Okay.
Yeah, she's been wonderful. There's I've talked to him about the fact that I worry about with even my mom. I go, I'm worried that I might get rejected again. And she goes, I'm not going anywhere, is what she
Right.
says.
Right.
That's
Right.
her thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the very first time I met her, we talked. My wife was with me, and we're about an hour and a half in. We're going to go to dinner, and she comes back out of her bedroom, and she goes, and I had read enough by then to, I was worried, because it's your first meeting. And her statement was, well, you know what I feel about this? And I said, no. She goes, and this is where I was waiting for well, it was nice to know you, but she goes, I feel complete.
Wow. Hey,
yeah.
I'm a birth mom. I received that. Laura, you may want to speak on that too, but I say that, and I know you can't read the other person's mind about why they don't or whatever else and so forth. I make this statement because the people who wrote me, those 4 people in the last 30 days to 3 weeks or whatever, my response to them was, and the ones who had the mom who didn't want to, and they really had said they were thinking about having a reunion with him. So it's like they didn't say no, but she was concerned. It's like, well, why doesn't she? And good point. And you mentioned too, Michael, and just of course, Lori has a podcast on, and Darren, I know, is a listener. A lot of adoptees who are listeners, what they tell me is that it helps for them to see the perspective of the birth mom. And I will say to most people who ask that question, why? And I say, I don't know the true answer. I would simply say, and Laura, you can chime in to this or not, because I know you've worked in some different things with birth moms, is that the birth mother stuffs, and it's so much stuff so deep. You, Michael, was 58 years. It was 45 years for my son. Laura is now at 33 or whatever, or 25 years for you, Darren, and all that. When that number of years, if you have not faced that grief, that trauma, that fear, that all that hurt and pain you've gone through, you're scared to the point you can't. It's, right. I say, paralyzes you. So, I mean, I say that from the birth mom's perspective for those. I was like you, Lori. I was ready at any time. I'm thinking it was 21 in my state and so forth. And well, yeah, because I put the information with the state, I think the State Department of the state and whatever. And so, yeah, so he'll have my information. He can search and he'll find me. So I was ready for that. But there are other moms who are not. So you want to talk about that, Lori? Just address that whole thing?
Well, I'm an adoption professional. I work with birth parents in post-placement issues, and I work with a lot of adoptees as well. And when adoptees ask me about difficult reunions or lack of reunion, one of the first things I say is to the adoptee, you don't know the messages that your birth mother has been told about who she is and what she is because of the decisions that she's made. And those messages can be very powerful. And if you've gone 50 years or 25 years or 33 years hearing or believing that you weren't even worthy of parenting your own child, if you've worked on that, then there's a risk to you to bring that child back in, because you may lose the work that you've already accomplished. If you haven't worked on it, then it just brings it back to the surface, and you feel all of that shame and all of that unworthiness and all of that pain that you've been told or you've imposed on yourself for however many years. And sometimes it's just simply too difficult to face that. And other times, if birth moms have kept their pregnancy and their adoption plan a secret, then there's a real fear that if that secret comes to light, they could lose everything that they have. And for some of them, that's very little, because they may not have had other children, or they may have had other children, but they never felt complete as a mom. And
Mhm.
any risk to what you have is sometimes very scary.
Right.
And I wanted to say, like, to Michael, when you said, and I'm sure that I know that other adoptees feel this way too, but when you said you were afraid of being rejected again, I just want to be able to say, like, to my daughter and to all of the adoptees that I know, in most every case, you were not rejected. It was not our decision to make an adoption plan was not because we didn't want a child, this child, you, any child. It was because we were in a desperate situation, and in order to give our child the life we believed that child deserved, we had to make a sacrifice. And it wasn't a rejection, it was out of pure love and concern.
And Lori, I agree with you. And the other side of it, and not that because I'm getting all perspectives, but the adoptee does not know that story.
No,
And
I know.
right.
Know.
And reason I'm saying I concur with you. I agree completely with you. And that's why, with all these secrets that's been kept for so many years, not even past the baby school area or whatever else you want to call, that people are not sharing. Because just as you said, to Lori, when their child may come, they may not have told their current family or their husband and so forth, and I'm going to lose this, I'm going to lose that. That's what they're going through. But at the same time, is like if the adoptee is told or giving an idea of how it really is. We have Birth Moms Real Talk Village, which is our private Facebook Zoom that we're doing, and we're reading Primal Womb. And it talked about in there and saying that you may be adopted as a newborn 2 months, 2 days, 2 weeks, but you got a history for 39 weeks or whatever period of time you were with your mother. That bonding, and I say, and I stand on this, the birth bond is never broken. Never broken, never broken, never broken. I was not with my son the first 45 years, but my bond was there because he was made and grew in me. And that's why a lot of the aspects, his personality and all of that is the same. So I think we have to just understand, even though people may think, well, the newborn, you're taking a newborn and they'll forget, but I truly don't believe forget. Let me hear some input from Michael, you and Darren.
Well, I mean, I understand about not being rejected. I guess the thing is she didn't reject me, but certainly her father did. I mean, he was the one, all the way to the extent. Now, keep in mind, Yvonne would know this, is that it was 1961. And this is how much I didn't even know anything. I didn't know that abortions were illegal back then.
Right,
What did I know?
Yeah.
And as it turns out, my grandfather, mom's side, was a doctor. So when she came home, she was a college student. He basically said to her, and she told me this straight out, she goes, well, you have a choice. You can either have an abortion or put it up for adoption. So, I mean, from that perspective, that's pretty rejected from not her, but her father,
Right.
And
but that's what I mean. That was your perception, because that's how you received that.
Yeah. That's how I think of it. And it's not. I don't. And the thing is that no, she didn't reject me because she said point blank to me. She said, "No," I go, "It just didn't feel right. I wasn't going to have an abortion." So she didn't reject me, but it's the whole. I don't know about rejection. It's just the whole industry is just so goofy. I probably wouldn't. You probably wouldn't feel rejected if you knew the truth. As far as like maybe open adoptions. I'm still kind of in that realm of trying to figure out whether that's a good. I think it's got to be better than the secret. Zone. But so that might help a lot of adoptees in the future and birth parents, but that's got its own set of problems too.
Right. Yeah. Darren, any thoughts?
Yeah, I understand that most birth moms go through adoption out of love, but the problem with that is, from the adoptee's perspective, is once this separation occurs, that's when our trauma starts.
Mhm.
My birth mother never held me. They put her under so it wouldn't be as painful for her, which was very common back in the baby scoop era. But even though I was in her for 9 months and we had a bond that way, when I came out, I did a regression therapy session on this. And when I came out of her womb, I was crying for her and screaming for her to hold me.
Mm.
And even when I was taken to foster care a few weeks later, I was terrified because the foster father was abusive.
Wow.
And I was abused in foster care for 7 months. I didn't consciously remember it, but my body did. A year,
Right.
for a
Right.
whole year after my parents got me, every time my adopted dad picked me up, I would cry, and nobody
Right.
knew why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
So thank you for that. Because like I said, today we want to have that conversation. We've got two aspects now. So we've heard from birth moms, we've heard from adoptees. I'm always looking at a solution of how things can be better and how you're healing yourself. Just as Lori has shared that she's not had the reunion that she wants with her daughter. And my question is, Lori, how are you, when I say dealing with it, how are you processing that? Because it's a process of that grief and that sad and that trauma. That's trauma. And we
Yeah.
and adoption is lifelong. So you work in the adoption industry, but just even personally in sharing that the listeners and viewers may be looking today and said they may be in that same situation. And a lot of people are not getting help. You and I both know that, Laura. A lot of birth moms are
Yeah.
just not getting help. And I say dire circumstances sometimes because I hear the stories. I'm in those rooms and I hear all of
Right.
it. And I try to really give support and so forth. But moms have got to just be able to do to help heal themselves. So, Laura, you want to talk about what you've done and what other suggestions you would make for other birth moms?
Yeah, what I do, and I do this as much for myself as for any other birth mom, is for the last 9 years I have been very involved in post-placement services for birth parents. I host retreats for birth moms. I do support groups that I call pizza meetups that are for birth moms, birth dads, people who support birth parents. I have an online group for birth parents. We have 1,200 birth moms from all across the world, really. And I believe that the connection between birth moms is what helps us to heal. And it's important to find other people who understand what it's like to walk this journey, because it's difficult. And the other thing that I do, and Michael, you kind of touched on this, is I'm a big advocate for openness in adoption, because I believe that every human being has a right to their own puzzle pieces. And if birth parents or adoptive parents choose to withhold someone's puzzle pieces from them, how are they supposed to put their life puzzle together?
Right.
And
Right.
when we have an opportunity from infancy to speak to children openly and honestly about adoption, give them access to their puzzle pieces from the very beginning, start visits with birth family in infancy before a child even is cognitively aware of what's happening, and we make connection with birth family a normal part of their upbringing, then we take away so much, not all, but so much of the trauma that comes from that separation. For adoptees, in the not knowing and not having access to information, and not understanding, not being able to hear from their birth mother directly throughout their life that it wasn't a rejection of you, because I
Right.
understand why adoptees feel that way.
Yep.
It's just heartbreaking to know that that wasn't really reality.
Right. Right.
To be able to get those messages throughout your life consistently, and to have the opportunity to ask questions directly and have those questions answered by the people who are most informed about it, I think is the best way to approach adoption. And yes, there are still that it's still complicated even with
Yeah.
open adoption, but I think it's better. And adoption is always going to be messy. It's always going to be complicated, but
Yeah.
when we know better, we should do better.
Absolutely. You know, and what you said, Lori, that every person should have a right to, I say, their own story, that their original birth certificate and their story of what the circumstances are, because it's just like anyone else. If you don't know, you form your own opinion. I mean, what else do you have to do? You know, the perspective. Well, why didn't they? You know, just like you said, Darren, is like, okay, I've been waiting 25 years to meet you, but money is going to stop you. Oh, no, you know, and that's where you come from. But along with it, until we talk and have this conversation, and I say this time and time and time again, you may get tired of me hearing it, but the reason why this platform was started was to have transparency, discussion, collaborative talks out in the open with birth moms, adoptees, and adoptive parents. And I go on record, there are not many, if any more, if any public forums like this. You'll see it in conferences, you'll see it in support groups, but until you pull the lid off of it, it's not truly going to have an honest conversation. So that's why I put myself on the line. This is fully funded by Phoebe Global, which is my business. I'm celebrating 25, 30 years in doing it because that's what I believe in. I'm part of it myself. And so I stand on what I believe, number one, of what needs to be done and given. And I want as many people to come on. So first of all, I thank all of you for being on today, being very transparent, being very in a public forum. This is on Facebook, YouTube, and the video will be launched on there. And so many times, whatever, we've gotten between 8,000 to 10,000 views with some of these videos based on the topics and whatever. So you're putting yourself on the line to share your story. And I thank you for that because it's so important, because everyone's not ready to share their story. You know, like I say, I do the podcast. I think I'm taping 2 this afternoon. And some of the ones you've heard has been anonymous. That's not their name. They feel like they can't say their name. And I said, that's okay. As long as you feel like you want to tell your story. And most of the time, the birth moms are saying that it's a healing for them, as well as giving a different perspective to adoptees. So that's the general round. Any last thoughts or whatever for today from any of you?
I think, I agree. I think it's helpful for adoptees and birth parents to get therapy. My birth mother chose not to get therapy because it hurt too much, and that I think was a big conflict and issue with our relationship. I was in therapy on and off for 10 years during our reunion, and it's unfortunate, but I chose to break it off because I felt this is the healthiest choice for me. It's not an easy choice, but
Right.
I knew if I did that, I wouldn't be worried about getting an angry email or angry letter in the mail attacking me out of left field for no apparent reason. And that's how I lived for most of our reunion. And it's unfortunate. I'm sorry that she is hurting and other birth mothers are hurting, but the trauma stays with you. And if you don't, you can face it with help, or you can bury it.
Yeah, you can bury it, but you know what? And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Darren, but it's going to come out somewhere.
Yes,
and it comes
sometimes come out real ugly.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It comes out uglier than it went in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the only thing I was going to say last is that the whole adoption industry needs to really deal with the whole secrecy thing and closed adoptions, because DNA, this 23andMe and Ancestry has opened Pandora's box. There's no way to keep this secret. And so I think it would be really wise for everyone in the industry, state, private and everything, to just, rethink their policies about all this stuff.
Right.
It's
Right. As you say, Michael, 40, 50 years ago, who knew DNA and whatever? Because as Laura would say, most birth moms were told, you'll get over it. Just go ahead, just say, you'll forget all about that. Just go ahead with your life. Just forget all about that. That ain't happening, and then the whole thing, you'll never, the idea of meeting your child again, that was like, oh no, it will never happen.
Yeah. So that's my parting shot. It's time to change this.
Absolutely.
I would have been able to grow up knowing. I now have. I grew up with two sisters. One adopted, one was biological to my parents. But I have an additional 7 brothers and sisters now that I could have known. But I have. We have no shared history together. Which is, we're making memories. Making memories now is what we're doing.
Good.
But
Go
ahead.
Go ahead, Lori.
For my daughter, between myself and her birth father, she has 4 half sisters who are amazing young women that I know that if she knew them, she would be glad that she knew them. She would be glad that they were part of her life. And it makes me sad that that we can't know each other.
Right. Now, something you said, Darren, I truly believe too taps into maybe on why sometimes adoptees don't want it. And you mentioned loyalty to your adopted parents. And I don't know if you had that same thing too, Michael. I feel that hinders for us in some adoptees having a reunion with their birth parents because they're feeling offense or they're going to not like it and they're trying to please. But in the meantime, I feel as if, I don't know, what is it? It's like the guillotine. It's like you pull from one side to the other, You really want both because they're both your parents. I say nature versus nurture versus nature. We need both. You cannot really do one without the other. Your adopted parents wouldn't have a child if you hadn't given birth to the child. So you've got to understand it all plays a part. And it's being open to say we all can work together. And as you, Michael, you get to know one another of people. Otherwise, you're shut off half of you or whatever part you say. Like you mentioned, Lori, the sisters and all that. People you don't know. And I've seen it in my reunion. It's like, wow, it's like revelation. Yeah, there's some other people out here who look like me. And sometimes it's just that, but other times it's other things, but that whole scenario. So my point, or my purpose here on the planet and so forth is fulfill the destiny and purpose for why I'm here, my story, and to make my story impactful and to help others through it. So viewers, listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please support Birth Moms Real Talk. We have our podcast. I'm taping 2 this afternoon. The current one running, I think, is... I was going to say Lori was not Lori, but about shame. You mentioned is a shame that's been being. So you listen to the podcast. And I want to say, because Damon will give you a shout out to that, as well as another adoptee podcast. I'm actually talked to her yesterday, Jennifer, what's your whole name, Jennifer? Once upon a time.
Jennifer Diane Ghosted.
Yeah. So I will be doing on her. And this is worldwide. You mentioned 1,200, 12,000. Do you realize, and I want to say, when you work in this, how many adoptions occur every year? Is it 50,000, Lori? What's the number?
I don't know the statistic off the top of my head because sometimes it's hard to
but I've seen some, and the reason why I bring that up is the fact that for every child that's adopted, there's a birth mom there. And so you have the birth mom and adoptees regarding that. So I'm saying this whole plethora in constellation is so big. And a lot of people are not tuning into things like this or even know. I have actually gotten emails from birth moms since the podcast saying they have never met another birth mom. They've been so isolated all their lives, never talked to one, never had a conversation, and had never, and some of them have done the podcast. When they call me and I think, or send me an email, they'll say, I don't know why I'm contacting you. My family does not know I have a child and I want to share my story. So it's like, we have to help each other. And Lord, as you say, until we talk in support groups and whatever, that's where the healing takes place. That's where the healing takes place. So this triad, be it adoptees, birth mom, and adopted parents, the fourth Saturday of every month, Birth Moms Real Talk will be hosting this. So if you know other adoptees, other birth moms, or adopted parents, have them come on here live, share their story, because it's impactful. I know I'm going to be getting emails. Thank you, because they're listening in. They may not be willing to go on live and show their face and talk about it, but they're listening in. And that makes a difference. So I want to thank all of you again for coming on. Come back again. Listen to Lori's podcast. Thank you all. I have to say for is Michael, of course, Damon Davis, with whom I'm listening to Damon's a podcast, and Michael is a guest on there. And I hear him saying, what has helped me is Birth Moms Real Talk. I'm like, okay. That's wonderful, because a lot of adoptees listen. A lot of adoptees listen, birth moms listen, and all that. So thank you all for coming on. You've been listening to Birth Moms Real Talk Saturday Chat. Why birth moms, and adoptees may not want a reunion. And we hope we've uncovered some stories behind that possibility of why. So the people who contacted me, I told them I was doing this, and I asked them to tune in or at least look at the video. Hopefully it's helped you. Because I gave you my opinion, but to get it from the other people, that's always. So continue to listen. Support us on Patreon. Birth Moms, join our village. We're reading Primal Womb, as I said now. We have a Zoom meeting once a month. We've got other things we're doing. I'm going on tour, so Birth Moms Real Talk is going on tour. So a lot of things are happening. Join in with us. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne.
All right, we're off live. I think no. Hold it.